So when did you actually do your first sort of deal after doing your mentorship? You've done your training now. When was that first deal happening, and how, do you need money for that first deal, or how did you go about it? Did you become a property entrepreneur or investor first, or what route did you take?
So I first up, it was how do I get cash flow because I've not got any money now. Um, so to do that, you've got to go down the kind of deal sourcing route or the low ticket entries, such as the rent to rent options. You've got to find a way to make that work. So I tried deal sourcing. I did. Struggled at the start because I went in looking for BRLs straight away. And I sit on a deal for a month because I'd run my numbers so much and I'd be so scared to put this deal out. But also I wanted to prove I could sell my first deal on my own and not co-source it and not do any of that. It had to be me from A to Z. Again, stupidly, it was probably a bit egotistical, I guess.
Mhm.
That it took me a long time and I was sitting on things and I was missing things. So that took probably longer than what it should have done. But still, took me to the last hurdle. My first deal was actually on a rent to rent. It was a joint venture. Met some guys at the networking event. They said, "Oh, we found a property. We don't have the time to manage it. Let's go 50-50 on putting the money in." We were really lucky because it was already furnished. The landlord had already ran it as an SA. They just didn't want to. They didn't want to do it. They were from London. They didn't want to bother with it. So we had to put about £2,000 each in. Not bad, £4,000 setup fee. Liverpool city centre, literally right by the cathedral, really good location. And I was going to manage it. And I'd done the training, so I was able to say, yeah, do you know what? I feel like I can do this. I'm going to learn on the job. I did have to borrow the £2,000 in all fairness because I hadn't made any money yet. But I took it as a loan. I took it as I'm going to pay this back. So yeah, that was my first deal. It was the rent to rent one. And then because of that, because I was doing it and because I was putting myself on social media, even if I was just putting stuff on now that I'd look at and think, oh my God, why'd I post that? But you've got to start somewhere. You've got to be crap to get good at the
Mhm.
end of the day. So yes, that was my first deal. Posted it. People understood I was then doing rent to rents. And therefore, if I was finding a rent to rent, I could sell a rent to rent because I can understand it. And I think you can only sell what you know,
Mhm.
which is why I then waited to go down the BRR selling route because I had to get versed in property. I had to understand the dealings and that side of things and the negotiations to then lead me down the BRR route. So yeah, I then started to make a little bit of money doing that. Did some deals, lost some deals, got some secured. They weren't actually as secure as I thought. Lost some money again, made some money, kind of backwards and forwards like that for a while. Got a project of my own, which was a rent to rent Manchester city centre. Incredible location, nice property, needed a lot of work. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'd sold a couple of deals before, so I kind of had the money to then put into that. Spent about 10 grand, lived in it for weeks with kind of no hot water, heating, sleeping on the floor,
Wow.
really like hustling it. Like, I am going to make this work.
Mm.
And I'd done about a month. It performed really, really well. And then I got a letter saying, you can't Airbnb in this building. The head lease doesn't permit for it, X, Y, and Z. I'd rushed into a deal because I was so adamant to prove I had to get a deal done. I rushed into it, bypassed that, just thought I'd check, move on. Turns out the landlord and the management company were scam. They were scam. They didn't care. They knew that I should never have done that. Whole debacle kind of kicked off. They put new tenants into that property when I wasn't there on my 10 grand's worth of furniture and renovations, and their tenants are still sitting there to this day, and I can't get access. And small claims court took forever, still going through, not happening. So that was my first bad deal,
Oof.
and that was my first deal, and it was a bad deal.
That was quite a big failure in a way. And a lot of people would have just went, right, fuck
Mm,
this. Not
mhm,
for me now. I've just got burnt.
mhm,
See you later.
mhm.
But you're still standing here.
Still going. Everything went wrong at once. Everything went wrong at the exact same time. So I lost that. I then sold a couple deals thinking, oh, yeah, I've made some money now. This is good. this was whilst I was also doing this property, so everything was coming together for me. And then the deals fell through, and I had to refund the investors. Well, I refunded the investors because for me it was reputation. So that happened. About 3 or 4 refunds went out at one time at $3,000 a pop. So that's 9,000 plus the 10,000 I've just invested there. About 20,000 down. Shit. I was like, oh my God, I've lost everything. And I remember crying. Like, I was really, really, really shaken and upset by it. And then I just picked myself back up. And I mean, it took me a day or two to kind of pull myself back together, because that was my first proper ruffle of the feathers, so to speak. And I just kind of sat back and said, well, look, I've got 2 options. I'm not technically bankrupt. I don't owe anybody money. I've not really got much money right now, but I've got a good reputation. And so I went back out and I started over again. I did it again. And I kind of just let the SA thing just fizzle, put that on pause, and decided, right, now it's time to go down the BRR route. Now it's time to start sourcing these projects that are tangible, you can hold on to, and really kickstart that side of the business up. And yeah, that's kind of the lessons I learned from the failure was probably what kickstarted my whole career, I would say.
Mhm.
Exactly like I said before, like I don't necessarily celebrate the wins, I don't also get caught up in the losses.
Mhm.
It's inevitable. It's not an easy industry that we're in. It's not. The only way that you are going to have real wealth is by messing up a few times, and by, things getting taken away from you and things going wrong, and you have to learn them lessons. And that was what most people were saying in property. When you really get into it and you start to listen to actual people who have been around in property for a long time, most people have lost and most people have made mistakes. And, you listen to so many people in this space and like, oh yeah, I messed up on this refurb. I did this on this refurb. I'm suing this builder for this amount. I'm doing this here. I lost this. These projects aren't working. Everybody's had these failures. So the sooner you realize that having a failure doesn't mean that you're bad and you don't deserve to be there. Having the failure and getting back up off it is the reason why you'll succeed. And I think the more wealth and the more success to be had from something, the more obstacles are going to be there. And I just kind of had that always in the back of my mind, again, probably from my childhood, from seeing it with my parents and seeing business like that. There was always just a voice in my head of, oh, just do a bit more, just do a bit more. And now if something goes wrong, you're like, all right, cool, what's next? Or right, cool, well, let's solve that problem. Let's not panic. How do we deal with that? We do that. Okay, cool, move on. And that.
So you also said that you joint ventured with somebody to do a project in Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn about that scenario or situation? Would you be doing that again? Is there anything you do differently? Because certain people come together and it ends up in fireworks.
To be fair, we don't have that business together anymore. But it wasn't for the reason that we're still friends. We're still friends. They're cool. I've got a lot of respect for them. We have gone different routes in the industry. I pulled away from that deal, in all fairness, because I was managing it. But I was up in Newcastle now and I was doing BRRs heavily. I was sourcing this heavily and I wasn't giving that the time it needed. And because of that, I then said, right, guys, you take over, you do it. I'm going to step back because this isn't my passion right now. I'm not getting excited about it just purely because it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got their own thing of what they enjoy doing. I'm 2 hours away. So if the cleaner's not right, I can't go and check in on it.
Mm.
I can't turn up after every clean and say, oh, I like this. And I've realized a lot of people who are successful in their industry of anything, it's on your doorstep, your project. You can go around and you can check in.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier to manage. So what I learned on the front end of that was never tie yourself in on the front end to longevity. As in, okay, we're doing this one deal together. It doesn't mean we do every deal together. Test the waters, let's try this deal out. Let's see how we go. Let's work out what our escape is. If it's not working, what procedures do we put in place for that? And do it like that. And now, for example, my most recent joint venture, we've got a contract that goes into the bitter end. And I feel good about it because I know this business relationship will either last a very, very long time, which is the plan, or we part ways and it's going to be really amicable because everyone knows where they stand already.
Mhm.
And I would say now going into any business decision, I'm going to spend those couple grand up front or whatever it is on solicitor contracts to get to the bottom of it and, have everything tight and
Mhm.
sealed for sure.
So how do you know how to negotiate?
Sometimes I think a lot of it's common sense. A lot of negotiating is common sense and seeing the bigger picture. You know, my friends always get really annoyed at me because if we go out together and I will barter for a discount, I'll try and negotiate a discount. I always will do it. It's just in my blood. It's who I am. It's probably from seeing, again, my parents, seeing my family, from being around that environment. My mum, she's a bit of a hustler as well. She's not afraid to sort of say it. So naturally I will, and I'm not bothered because at the end of the day, if you're respectful about it, if you're not walking in like rude, if they say no, they say no, cool, move on, fine. We did the deal. I didn't get what I wanted, but we did the deal. Or in a smaller sense, in business, if you don't get what you actually need for it,
Yeah.
fine, walk away, move on. Next problem, it doesn't matter. But yeah, that's probably where how the negotiating starts. It's common sense.